A new study has revealed that India is the world's leading polluter of plastic. This treaty, which experts believe could be the most significant environmental agreement since the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, was agreed upon by the United Nations Environmental Assembly in 2022. It is expected to be completed by the end of 2024. Last week, a research was released in the Nature journal that revealed that India is responsible for 1/5 of the world's plastic pollution. Approximately 5.8 million tons (MT) of plastic is burned in India every year, with an additional 3.5 mt of plastic being released into the environment as trash across land, air and sea. In all, India is responsible for 9.3 metres of plastic pollution worldwide each year. This is higher than the previous estimates and far higher than the following 3 countries on the list: Nigeria, 3.5 mt, Indonesia, 3.4 mt, and China, 2.8 mt. The unmanaged waste problem. Researchers Joshua W. Cottam, Ed Cook, and Costas A. Velis of the University of Leeds estimated that 251 metres of plastic garbage is created year, which is enough to filling nearly 200,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Untreated, about 52.1 mt, or 1/5 of this trash, gets emitted into the atmosphere. Municipal entities gather what is deemed managed waste and then decide whether to recycle it or send it to a landfill, according to the authors. The latter happens to the majority of plastic trash. Plastics that are burned in open, unregulated flames create harmful gases, including carbon monoxide and tiny particles. These pollutants have been associated with various health issues, including cancer, respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular disease, and neurological disorders. This type of garbage is known as unmanaged waste. In addition, it contains plastic, which, as unburned trash, winds up polluting every possible spot on Earth, from the peak of Everest to the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. About 22.2 mt, or 43% of the unmanaged trash, is in the form of unburned debris. The remaining 29.9 mt is burned either locally or at dump sites. Disparity between the north and the south around the world. Findings from the survey indicate a clear schism between the north and the south on the issue of plastic pollution. Across countries in Southern Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa and Southeastern Asia, we find that plastic waste emissions are highest, the study stated. 20 countries account for about 69% of global plastic pollution, or 35.7 mt annually. None of these countries are considered high income, defined as having a gross national income per capita of £13,846 or more, according to the World Bank. This is true even if the plastic trash generation rates of these so-called Global North HICs are higher than those of South American countries. There isn't a single HIC that is ranked in the top 90 polluters because most have 100% collection coverage and controlled disposal, according to the research. In the north, plastic pollution mostly came from uncontrolled debris, while in the south, open burning is the main way that plastic gets into the environment, except from Sub-Saharan Africa, where uncontrolled debris is a bigger problem. The study's authors argue that this is just an indication of the widespread absence or inadequacy of public infrastructure for waste management systems. Nevertheless, according to Costas Velis, we shouldn't put any blame on the global south, or praise ourselves about what we do in the global north in any way. Velis went on to say that the capacity of people to dispose of waste is mainly dependent on the authority of their government to offer the required services. Research criticism. Concurrent with the present research are discussions to establish the first ever legally enforceable international treaty addressing the pollution caused by plastics. This treaty, which experts believe could be the most significant environmental agreement since the Paris Climate Agreement in 2015, was agreed upon by the United Nations Environmental Assembly in 2022. It is expected to be completed by the end of 2024. But there hasn't been much agreement on what it ought to include. Some countries and industry groups that produce fossil fuels would rather concentrate on solving the waste management problem than reducing production of plastics, which they see as a more pressing issue. Conversely, there are African and European nations that are working to limit manufacture of single-use plastics and eliminate them altogether. Given the magnitude of plastic waste output, the economics, and the complexity of recycling, this high-ambition coalition asserts that it is unattainable to merely manage plastic trash to the point where there is zero contamination. The correlation between rising plastic output and pollution was determined in an April study published in Science Advances. This means that for every 1% rise in production, there was a 1% discharge of pollutants. Winkauger et al., The International Community's Role in Responsible Plastic Pollution, 2024. New studies that support the idea that plastic is a waste management problem have their detractors. An expert in the field, Neil Tangri, said to the AP, "It risks us losing our focus on the upstream and saying, hey, now all we need to do is manage the waste better." Gaia is a worldwide network of advocacy organizations focused on zero waste and environmental justice activities. It's important, but it doesn't tell the complete tale. One notable entity that has lauded the report is the plastic sector. Chris Jahn, Council Secretary of the International Council of Chemical Associations, stated, "This study underscores that uncollected and unmanaged plastic waste is the largest contributor to plastic pollution.